Marsh rats. My yard is a mess. Boat stuff everywhere. It's time to get this stuff done and get my yard cleaned up so my wife will love me again. We've got this transom wedged out. I've been letting it dry for about 2 weeks. This morning I've been going at it with the heat gun, you know, just letting it sit and blow until I start smelling fiberglass, and then just moving it, letting it blow. And then after that, I've been slowly by hand just kind of working it. And this transom's dry to the point now that if I hold this heat gun in any spot for any amount of time, it starts to smoke, and I don't want to burn the boat down. So I'm gonna say that's plenty dry enough to get some epoxy down in there and it bond. So we're gonna take some Total Boat penetrating epoxy. I'm gonna pour it slowly from one end. That way it seeps down in here and pushes its way across here, which allows any bubbles to be pushed out as it's moving across. From there, we've got to start doing the sanding and grinding and all of the unfun stuff. Everywhere we've got to put supports for the floor. Everywhere we've got to tab the floor in has all got to be sanded and prepped. All of this little bit that's left in from the seat wall, seats on the wall here have to be grinded out. So we're gonna get the transom started because we got to pour it and let it cure before we put the coosa back in place. All right, so if you'll notice how I cut this on an angle, I had to trim this out, but these are cut on a 45 here, so that when I put this transom back in here, it actually pushes on the gunnel of the boat. I didn't want to have to cut all of this open and slide it in there, so I just put it on a 45, and it's gonna bond here and be pushing on the actual gunnels of the boat. So we got Total Boat penetrating epoxy here, Total Boat 5:1 epoxy resin for all of the glass and layup work that's gonna be going on. Using wet edge. That's not the color that we're using for this boat. That's the marsh rat color. But using Total Boat wet edge, 1 part polyurethane paint for the top side. All right, another little tip. Save every, if you're gonna do this kind of stuff, save every little container you can get your hands on. Buying mixing cups adds up quick. The good thing about epoxy is you can usually pop it off of those cups, but by the time you've done that once or twice, they start cracking up. And man, these containers work just as good. For measuring, you're doing parts, so 2:1. You do 2 of these of 1 part and 1 of these of another part. There's your measuring. This is just a spray paint lid. Actually, it's a foam, like Great Stuff cap. It's free. Here we go. We're gonna mix up some resin and go from there. Start pouring this transom.
One. Two. All right, way back on that.
Now, 1 part of the hardener. Now take this and set it upside down so that all of the little bits will drain out of it instead of settling in the bottom of it. From there, we take it to the transom over here and start pouring it in. so you can see it creeping that way. So clearly that didn't fill it all the way up. It's not what we were aiming for, because if you wedge it out like this and then you fill it all up, when you pull the wedges, it's gonna overflow hardcore, and that's not what you want. That's just stuff you have to fill up, you know, clean up. So I underpoured it. When we removed the wedges and put pressure on that outer skin, it's gonna push that epoxy up and out. We're gonna let that kind of seep down in there for another minute or two, pull these wedges, cut some boards that go from here to here, wedge them in place, and that's what'll hold this outer skin tight while everything sets up. I'm gonna push this tight, come over here, mark it underneath, and then cut it off. I'm gonna cut it off a little bit longer than my mark so that I can wedge it down in there tight. And that's how I'm gonna hold everything tight against that plywood. Just like that. All right, so we've got all of our little wedges in there. Another tip is make sure that you have the boat level. If it's leaning one way or the other, all of the resin will run to one side or the other and just run out, and you'll end up with a dry spot on the other side. That's that. We're gonna cut the coosa to go in the transom and then start cleaning all this stuff out and sanding. So, woohoo!